Heyo, and we're back. your favorite troublemakers who like to take on topics that probably get us canceled at some point. This is Woodworking is Bullshit. I'm your host, Paul Jasper, scientist by day, woodworker by night, and I'm joined with my two amazing co-hosts, Erik Curtis on the left. They're together.
Heyo.
They're together, and it's trouble. Erik Curtis on the left, full-time furniture maker and content creator, and Mary Sai, UX designer by day and woodworktress by night.
Oh, yeah. Woodductress, baby.
Hey, you still got that? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
Does she have any followers or posts yet? Did that account?
A couple of people have followed.
What?
Yeah, you guys. So for those of you who don't know,
Wait,
I did manage to steal Woodductress as Instagram handle, and it's now the number one fan site, erotic fan site of Mary Sai on the internet. So.
You did not say erotic on it, did you? Oh my God.
Erik, I love
So
you.
you guys should go follow that.
You did not. Oh my God.
Let's blow it up. Let's blow it up.
This is the best show opening ever.
Why are we friends? Oh my God.
Oh, it's
Okay.
great.
So why are we friends? Great question. Anyway, we have other questions. We have other questions to get to. And today's question is another bomb. I'm sure it's going to upset and ruffle a lot of feathers. Today's question is quite simply, is DIY just marketing bullshit? DIY culture. Like, is it just a bunch of horseshit? And
oh my God.
when we started thinking about this, the first thing I was like, well, yeah, what is DIY? How is that? What
can
exactly
we define DIY?
do we mean?
Mary, can we define DIY?
Mary's so good at defining things. We thought she would take the lead on that.
That is false. I'm good at asking what the definition is.
My, how the tables have turned.
That's true, Mary.
I mean, I can try to find it. To be fair, I have no idea and did zero research on this.
Also shocking. It's very
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your huge preparatory work.
Okay, you really turn this on the... Okay, all right. I resent all of this. DIY stands for do it yourself.
This is like
well, yeah.
My favorite thing about the grapes of wrath were the fruit
and the anger. Okay, DIY.
It means do it yourself.
We hadn't spelled it out for the people who are living in holes. DIY stands for do it yourself. It involves a lower barrier of entry, I think, into the making world. So people who have materials accessible at, for example, Home Depot and Lowe's, maybe working with pine more and being able to renovate your houses. So a little bit of an easier barrier of entry into the making world. I know I'm missing a large chunk of that, as Erik's face is telling me.
No, that wasn't bad. That wasn't a bad definition. I think I would, if I had to attempt to define DIY outside of telling you all that it stands for do it yourself.
Oh my God.
I would maybe suggest that DIY is a person who is not traditionally or professionally trained in an area, taking up a project in that area to accomplish an end, not necessarily to sell an object, not necessarily to try to make something super high end, but to accomplish having that thing done for typically less money than it would cost to hire somebody to do a thing. I think the financial aspect of it is not without mention. Like, I think that's an important component, is people don't want to pay. Well, it doesn't have to be, let's just take outside of the woodworking, oeuvre in and of itself. Let's say somebody wants to, I'm not allowed to say oeuvre.
What the hell's oeuvre?
Genre? Don't act like you two fuckers don't know what oeuvre means. Both of you know what oeuvre means.
But no one says it.
It means genre.
No one says it. Are you saying OUEVRE?
OUVRE. I don't know how to fucking spell French.
Okay.
I don't know, I'm a
All right,
homegrown American boy.
Sorry, go on,
I
go
grew
on.
up eating bald eagles. Yeah.
Bald eagles?
You didn't? Gator and eagle for dinner.
By the way, oeuvre in French means to open. So I'm not sure what you mean genre.
Well, depends on which French.
Guys,
person
let's
you're
move on.
talking to.
Okay, move on. Eric, stop
what was I
using
saying? Something
stupid
about
words
oeuvre?
like. Well, no, your point was that DIY came up as a way to like figure shit out on your own. That
Yeah. So
you knew
outside
you
of the
needed.
woodworking context,
Yeah.
I think there are people who say, like, listen, I have tools and I have the ability, like, I have a working back. I'm going to figure out how to install fences. And that, I think, has its value and teaches people that they are capable of meeting an end.
Okay, so this is very much it bears on the history of DIY, which I took the liberty to look up, unlike Mary. So when I did this research, I'm just kidding, Mary. When I did this,
Giving me so
Sorry,
much
Mary.
shit.
when I took the time to generously do this research,
Oh my God.
I learned that apparently the origins of DIY are from the 1600s.
Really?
I was like,
That's
what?
That's genuinely surprising.
Apparently, Joseph Moxon wrote a book called The Mechanic Exercises, and it was a how-to manual for how to blacksmith, how to cast metal, how to draw, how to do wooden joinery, how to engrave, how to print books, make maps, make mathematical instruments, and other. It was like a how-to-do-it book, like a DIY book.
It's like an encyclopedia.
But it was all DIY related.
Huh.
And then, that's one of the earliest examples. And then
Can I pause there for half a second? Because I'm really
Sure.
curious, and you may not have an answer to this, and this may just be Eric's brain going off on ADD different roads. But I'm curious, most people couldn't read at that point. So the literacy, well, here's what I'm wondering is, like, is this DIY manual made specifically for, like,
Is it a picture book?
is it a picture book, but also, like, the gentry who don't typically work with their hands to, like, if you want to learn how to build a thing, like, I'm thinking out loud. It would be
Eric,
really interesting to know who the intended audience was for that
Eric,
book.
Unfortunately, I did not oeuvre the book, so I don't know what's inside it. Okay.
You didn't roll that R back.
Oeuvre.
Oh my God.
All right. So then in the mid 1800s, I guess there was an explosion of DIY culture. They were saying, you marry the head to the hands. And it was a matter of necessity, apparently, in the 1800s, because there was a population explosion. People were having many kids. And so being able to afford toys at home was like not that easy. And so they would make toys for their kids. And then, so that's the 1800s. And now we get to the 1900s, the 1920s. My dad was born in the 30s, I remember. And he, that relates to the economic disasters and the Depression.
Mm-hmm.
In the 1920s and 30s. And my dad grew up through the, post-Depression era. And he was always very affected by growing up as a child of the Depression. And his mother would make his pants because she was a seamstress. So she would make his pants at home. And I remember him telling me stories of being absolutely humiliated going into school in pants that his mother sewed. I felt kind of bad for him because I can imagine all the other kids have like the store-bought pants and your mother's like sewing your pants. Right? But anyway, the economic trials and tribulations of the 20s and 30s stimulated DIY because people wanted to put on that, hey, we still have our shit together at home on the homestead, even though we have a very little money. So DIY became very important. And same with World War II. Self-reliance became on center stage, during the war. You shouldn't look, we don't need to go outside the United States. We're capable and we're self-reliant. All right. So now we're through the 1900s, and then around the 1950s, there was more change. There was a shorter work week and more home ownership. Everyone started buying houses after the war. And even in my neighborhood, we call it ranch land. There's a whole bunch of World War II ranches, like post-World War II ranches that all the soldiers and all the families with this newfound money, could buy. And so when they all have houses now, well, Who's going to fix those houses?
Mm-hmm.
And now we get to the first TV shows. So around the 1950s was the first DIY TV show and Do It Yourself magazine. So that it all makes sense. It came on the heels of like people buying all these houses and DIY magazines and DIY shows. And now
Do you know
we
what
get
the show was? What the first show was?
Yeah, I don't remember the name. I didn't know it when I read it.
Is it called Instant Dream Home?
This is the weirdest episode of The Twilight Zone you've ever seen. I'm actually 79 years old.
Weekly do-it-yourself TV guide. Barry Bucknell. I think it's
fucking classic Barry.
Interesting. Okay.
Bucknell's House, I think it was called. All right, so now we're up to the 1950s, and we have the TV is coming online, and the shows are coming online, and now we have 1970 with counterculture, right? The reaction to mass-produced goods, the Vietnam War, tune in, turn on, tune in, drop out, counterculture. You know, all the hippie movement, like go against mainstream. Do it yourself, grow it yourself, make it yourself. Like, let's not drink the Kool-Aid. We can do this ourselves. So I think 1970s had the counterculture. And then we come into things we are familiar with, which is like Better Homes and Gardens, right?
Mm.
We know we're vaguely familiar with that. And This Old House.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right? Like, so, I mean,
Yep.
there's, you know, I didn't really have all this in place prior to doing this research, but now that I see there's a long, very sensical history of DIY.
Sure. Well, you
Right?
have to know how to survive if you don't have the means to pay somebody else to keep you alive. I think that's largely what it comes down to.
And where are we today, though, Eric? Like, today, I feel like we've slid back. Like in the 1950s,
in what way?
In the 1950s and 60s, everyone knew how to do plumbing, how to sweat copper, how to do some base electrical, like, you know, outlets and receptacles.
Yeah. Basic home shit.
And some basic woodworking and some basic metalworking. Today, I'm like the only person in my not the only, but the number of people who knows this is dwindling severely. Like the millennials and Generation Z is just doesn't give a shit usually.
Is that a result of economic prosperity and hyper specialization?
It is.
Right? Is that right?
I think it is.
So the more capital that you have to expend, the more you don't need to learn to do a thing because you can pay somebody else to do it. And there is a economic theory that's good for the economy because not only are you then more specialized in your area, but you're promoting other small businesses by supporting them economically. Yeah. So I don't think that's without its value, but you know, like realistically, I learned how to do electrical. I learned how to do plumbing. I learned how to do framing. I learned how to do tiling because when things broke in my house and I was a kid and we couldn't afford to fix them, I had to figure out how to fix them. Like if that outlet burned out, I either figured out how to wire it or we didn't have an outlet. You know, that's the end of the day. But I was 14. So like, of course, if my mother had the money to pay somebody to come fix it, it would have been a smarter decision to pay a trained professional to come fix that outlet. But, you know, necessity is the mother of invention. So you figure out how to do it.
That seems to be the theme through the whole history of DIY. It's just like necessity, basically.
Isn't there an uptick in the enrollment in trade schools, though, in the past few years?
Past couple years. Yeah, because I think as college has become so financially fucked, so stupid, people are asking, do we really need to go to, do all of us really need to go to college? In fact, my neighbor's kid, he does not have a propensity for book learning and classes. He's a smart kid, but that's just not his language.
He's you can make good money now.
Yeah, he's more of a doer. So
you could always make good money doing it, but
they figured this out early with him, and they're like, he's going to go to a trade high school because I think that just makes sense for him. And I was like, that is a great idea.
You will always need plumbers.
Yeah.
And as long as electricity is around, you will always need electricians.
Plus, it's like when that divide widens even more, the need for those people who can afford, you know, the trade school folks, like they're going to be able to charge more and more.
So have you seen this pattern though that I'm talking about, where like the millennials and Generation Z are actually like really not, they didn't have someone show them the ropes of electrical, of plumbing, of DIY.
Nobody showed me the ropes. Like, it literally was, the first time I sweat copper, I didn't know what flux was. So I had 2 pieces of copper, and I had some solder, and I heated them up, and I couldn't get it to sweat properly, and I couldn't figure it the fuck out until finally I walked over to my neighbor's house, who I knew well enough. And I was like, hey, Dan, why, like, this doesn't look like the pipes that are in my house. And he was like, yeah, because you don't have any flux on the goddamn joint, you idiot. Like, but that's how you learn things, is by people teaching you those things. And if nobody is available to teach you, and you don't have YouTube because the year is 2003 or whatever it is, then you just have to piecemeal it together.
I learned it when I bought my house, and how the 80-year-old guy who got me into woodworking, he showed me how to sweat copper. He showed me how to wire electrical outlets. He explained amperage and voltage. I was so lucky to have that. And I do try to pay that forward to the new kids in the neighborhood. If they have questions or whatever, I definitely try to pay it forward. Mary, how about you? Were you exposed to these DIY things? No?
Absolutely not. My parents are the least handy people in the world, and I think that is actually why my brother and I turned out the way we did, because we saw how incapable they were of doing any sort of DIY handiness, and we were like, all right, we gotta like actually learn this stuff, because we see how much they struggle, because we didn't have that much money growing up. So I don't even know, there was just like the shoddiest patchwork things, and like probably not very safe either. So I think, it was mostly learning it either just from like the internet. I think YouTube has been huge for me, even just learning basic things in the past few years that I probably should have learned growing up, but I just never had access to.
So I'm curious about your experience. What I have seen as a general trend, and this is not, it's not everybody's experience, but I think generally people who are forced to work with their hands as a means to get by, and then escape that life. Let's take your father, for example, like, didn't have a lot of money, came over here, found himself in a good career, and was able to provide you guys with what he assumes is a better life than what he had.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Those types of folks, generally speaking, will shun people who work with their hands, not because they're lesser than, but because they think that they have ascended to a level of economic prosperity where they don't need to work with their hands, and therefore they won't. Was your experience growing up one that suggested people who work with their hands were lesser than people who don't?
I don't know if it was that explicit. I think my parents always wanted me and my brother to be in white collar jobs, because they thought that is where more of the money was made. I think in their mind, and especially in their country growing up, like blue collar jobs and trade positions, they didn't make as much money as they do now, and especially maybe in the US comparatively to Taiwan. So I think that was always the goal, to, push us towards white collar jobs and education and going to college, etc. I don't think that is explicitly said, though, that they were like, I don't know, lesser than. Because when, something wrong happened, we had to pay for it. So
sure,
it's it's the luxury of paying for convenience. And I think when I was growing up, I was like, oh, like I don't know. I think I'll never be that kind of person who pays for convenience. So that's why I wanted to learn all of these things. And Eric's laughing, because now these days I'm like, oh, I'm 100% paying for convenience.
I don't know what you're talking about.
100% come back around to that.
You are the most get your hands dirty, toil in the mud kind of person that I know. Real blue collar, America.
I used to have that mentality, and now I'm just like, oh my God, I don't have time. I just don't want to deal with it.
Hey, you know what? In fairness to you, I think that's, even people who work with their hands for a living, that's a level of economic prosperity that I think everybody aims to achieve. Like, if you build houses for a living, like the cobbler kids have no shoes situation, you don't want to come home from work and fix your house.
Yeah.
A lot of the contractors that I know who are successful
That's
and
true,
run
yeah.
major businesses pay their guys to come fix their house because they don't have the time or the energy
That's
at
true.
the end of the day to do the shit.
I will say what is nice is being able to have that background and understand that they're not ripping you off.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
being able to understand what is going on, is this a good deal? Are they doing
Yeah.
it properly? Like that, having that context is great.
And yes, and you know when it's worth your money to pay for it, and you know when
Yes,
it's not,
exactly.
because you know what's being done, and you can see if they're doing what you really want them to do.
Yeah.
So for me, I've always felt strongly, and I think this is just who I am, that I don't want to be incapable of doing the things I need for myself or my family. So every piece of work on this house, I have pretty much done it all myself. And it's for two reasons. Because number one, I know I'm going to do a good job. I don't not do a good job on my own house. No one cares more about this house than we do. And because I have some like skill sets, at least a base of skill sets, I know I can figure it out. So when the wife's like, hey, can we redo our bathroom? Or hey, can we redo the kitchen? I may not have, I've never tiled before the kitchen. And I'm like, how hard could it be? You know, like if woodworking's pretty tough. So how
That's a
can I not?
specialized.
Ooh.
I mean, woodworking's pretty tough, right?
But
And
tiling's easy?
no, I'm not saying tiling's easy.
Like
but
words.
No. I wasn't saying that. But if I have the perseverance to figure woodworking out, I bet I can
Sure.
figure tiling out. That's what I
Sure.
mean. Not that one's
Sure.
easier and one's not. All right.
Yeah. No,
Thanks
that's
for being a dick.
That's
Let's get Paul canceled.
that's a fair point though, right? Like April, my buddy April always, well, you guys both know April too, April
Yeah.
Wilkerson.
Mhm.
Yeah,
She
she's
always
great.
says everything is figure outable. And
It is.
I think that's true, right? Like if you
Yeah.
want to, if you make the decision that you are going to figure out how to do the thing, you can
Yep.
figure out how to do the thing now more than ever before in human
Yeah.
history, because you have the largest library in the history of humanity at your fingertips at all times in your pocket.
This
So
is
you
true.
can figure out how to do anything. It's just a question of whether or not you want to or you need to. So I think, like, coming back to the question of, is DIY marketing bullshit? Like, right off the jump, it's not, because there's a history there long before contemporary marketing kicked in and people making money from being a DIYer.
So Eric, then where did we go south? You're picking up exactly where I wanted to go, which is there's also this feeling these days of like, is DIY bullshit? Things you took a turn a little bit, and you're starting to talk to that. So before you elaborate on why it turned, I've decided that Mary and Eric are going to take turns discussing whether DIY, why it's good, and why
WIBS Debate Club.
Why it's bad. Okay, we're gonna have a little debate, and a little internal
Okay.
debate.
Okay.
Did you
WIBS
say
Debate
WIBS?
Club.
WIBS
Yep,
Debate
WIBS
Club?
Debate Club, baby.
Oh my God, is this podcast called WIBS now?
I don't love that.
We gotta have a nickname for the people who listen. The Wibbies.
Whippers.
The Wib Whippers.
What the
Oh
hell?
my God.
The Wib
Oh my
Whippers feels
God.
right. That feels mildly pseudosexual.
All right.
Who's defending what?
Pseudosexual.
Okay, so Mary, you're going to list reasons why you think DIY is good for people, good for society, and good in general for the craft.
Love
And
it.
Eric, you're the evil axis.
Okay.
All
right.
You're gonna say why it's bad, why you think it's bullshit, and
Oh,
what
thank you
things have
for
gone.
letting Erik get canceled.
That's
Love it. Love it.
That's fine.
So a note
can
to
die
the
on this
listeners. A note to the listeners. We knew we were gonna do WIBS Debate Club, but they didn't know right before this moment right now who was gonna do which side. So good luck to you.
This is such a good seg. This is going to become a normal seg. I can feel it in my bones.
WIBS Debate Club.
Yeah,
I actually like that.
Yeah. All right.
What's the question that we're debating?
Oh Jesus, are you asking for a definition?
No, I'm asking what the question
The
is.
title of the episode.
But are we okay? All right.
I'm speechless. Mary, are you
We've
fucking
been,
kidding
we
me
have
right
been
now?
talking for 24 minutes and 50 fucking seconds. And
I
you're like,
wasn't
wait,
sure
what
if
are
we're
we
being a
talking
bit more
about?
specific on what either than like good versus bad. But all right.
All right.
Oh
Is
my
DIY
God.
culture bullshit? You
Mary,
have to defend
Mary,
DIY culture's honor.
Okay.
tell me why it's good. Mary, you lead. Give me one.
Like one reason?
One at a time, and we'll go back and forth.
Oh, I see. Okay, gotcha. It's a great entry into making with your hands. Do I need to say more? Or
Wow,
are we
that's
doing-
your opening argument in debate club?
I've never been in debate club, so
I do not believe you.
what? We definitely did not have debate club in my school.
You grew up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. You did not have debate club.
We did not.
Okay.
I'm not a confrontational
All right,
person.
so DIY culture is not good for the world, the movement, the craft, because while people are learning to build things with their hands, they are not learning how to build quality objects. They are just getting things done and getting things done cheaply and not learning how to actually make sustainable objects that won't be torn down in 5 to 10 years when those fads and clicks are done.
Oh,
Okay.
burn, Mary, burn.
Point yeet right.
Okay, but
first round. Eric, go ahead, Mary. Take him down to the second
That's
round.
how you do debate club, baby. Let's go.
Okay, I did not realize that there's like a whole intro thing, but all right. Second point, I would say that is an elitist point of view because the majority of people do not have access to those kinds of lessons and learning how to actually do these formal kinds of woodworking and joinery, etc. So the majority of people are just figuring it out on the fly. And sure, if they want to get into that eventually, maybe that's fine. But this is a large portion of folks who probably don't have the money or time.
Eric, you elitist prick. Mary's leading off strong in round 2.
It's a
What do you
fair
say,
point.
bitch?
That's a fair point. You're right. It may be elitist to believe that mortise and tendons are better than screws. I'll give that to you. You may be elitist to believe that proper joinery is better than metal fasteners. However, I'm going to posit this question. Where do you live?
Philadelphia?
Philadelphia. And Philadelphia is where?
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania's on what planet?
Oh my God.
So living as a resident of planet Earth, I'm gonna ask you this question. Do you like the planet? Do you enjoy living on the planet? And I wonder what happens if all of these people who are buying sheetrock and lumber and masonite and tiles from your big box stores and promoting large corporations who are polluting the earth could potentially foresee a future in which the waste that they are creating in order to create something that they think is beautiful and looks pretty in pictures online could damage our environment and make an unlivable universe and potentially take down pine forests in one fell swoop in order to create like an arched entryway into their kitchen. So that's what I'm
my God, Eric. You fucking dick.
Are you suggesting that these folks just deal with their current situations and never try to fix it?
Not at all. That's an excellent counter argument, Mary. I'm so glad that you asked. I'm not suggesting.
Eric, why don't you shut up and let Mary have her counterpoint?
She just asked me a question as her counterpoint.
Okay, so I mean, to
Mary-
elaborate, your solution then is to just tell these people to get fucked. Basically, say like deal with it, like
This is the best segment we've ever come up with.
Yeah, you're just gonna have to deal with like your rundown home and make no effort to try to improve it because you're just gonna. That's just how it is, and we're gonna place the environment's worth over your immediate needs.
That is such a good. Wait. Can I just hit the pause button on you two bickering like children for a minute? Like that is such a great point.
I like how he put us into this argument and then chastises us for bickering about it.
Okay, let me say that is the crux of the argument. Is like people want to live a decent life and they need to do it cheaply and quickly. And on the other hand, you have issues of sustainability and disposable furniture and impact on the environment. And are you going to tell someone, live in a shitty house because the concrete you're using is bad for the environment. Like this is the crux of a huge global problem is what you two are arguing about.
This is the crux of a real issue that I have no counterpoint for, and we're not in debate club anymore. This is a sidebar. Because Mary's point was basically like either you live with shitty conditions or you figure out how to fix it. And the only counter argument to that, in my opinion, at this moment, 2 gin and tonics in, is you learn how to make more sustainable materials, which is by definition, do it your fucking self. So you can DIY more sustainable materials in order to DIY better.
Fair. All right, Mary, do you have another positive? So your positives were, what were they? Now, you get the things you need,
more
necessity
accessible, driven. Yeah, necessity driven.
DIY's more accessible. Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah.
What else?
I guess if I can pivot a little bit to more of like the social media marketing side. So there is a huge positive in being able to put your knowledge out onto YouTube, which is an incredible library of knowledge, and being able to share your information with other people who are also in similar positions where you were before, and just starting out, being able to market yourself as someone who does no DIY and building a business from that. That's a great thing, especially for people who have no other alternatives in life. This is something that they learned themselves, and they want to share that knowledge with other folks.
So it sounds to me like what you're suggesting is, well, for lack of a kinder way to phrase it, that being unexceptional, like ordinarianism, if we can quote a term or coin a phrase, is a good thing. To suggest that people who don't have any real skill just be content with having non-skill, with just living their lives and creating a community around being wholly unexceptional in life, and rather than desiring to better themselves and make better objects and spaces, that what you're suggesting, it sounds like, is they just live content like pigs in the muck.
Oh my god!
I'm
gonna take this sound all over social media. I am so excited.
I'm gonna get canceled. I just want to point out this. I'm playing a role right now. This is called acting. This is I have an Emmy.
Not at all.
Hey, look. At least we get Mary to promote the show for once if she's willing to share that clip.
All I'm saying is, it sounds like you're suggesting people build a community around not knowing a thing, mediocrity, and that they don't chase betterment.
Okay,
that they just exist.
Okay. Third party coming in hot, and it's not me.
The moderator. Oh,
no,
okay.
It's not me.
All right, Paul has a split personality.
My wife is Team Mary. She's
my
like,
wife.
Listen. She's like, we all got to start somewhere. Early success can make you see that you can make things. You're capable of making things. And a lot of people don't know that. And so what Mary was talking about, these videos or these content creators or these DIYers, they show that it's approachable, it's relatable, it's easily digestible, and it's designed for success in a weekend to make you realize you can do this. You can make this. So my wife, Vicky, is Team Mary on that point.
Okay. So if I had to counterpoint that, again, this is my evil twin personality.
I don't know. We're going to cut all this out.
Just want to point out this is the role I'm playing. But if I had to counterpoint that, that is the same technique that I used to take with my 6th graders. It is an idea that it doesn't matter if it's good or bad. They just have to get to the finish line to then see that they are capable of doing a thing, and they can get better later, which is fair and true. And but Eric, also it is a thing that you do with children.
Eric, are adults that different from children most of the time?
Not in my experience.
Okay. All right. So we have all the good reasons. And Eric, I'm going to give you a moment to. All right. So
I listen. I need to clear the air.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Wait. Don't.
All right. Okay.
Oh
all right. So go ahead. All right. I think maybe it's time. I should let Eric clear the air because I put him on the bad side, the evil axis, and this is not how he feels. Eric, clear the air. You're on. Go.
All right. DIY culture is a good thing. It is a net positive. People make things with their hands and find value and meaning and empowerment in that process. and find community in that process. I think all of us, when we started, the three of us, on social media, we were not, we were on our journey, and we are farther along in our journey as woodworkers now than we were, 5 years ago.
Right.
And I think that community and conversation is really important. And whatever it is that you are doing to make things with your hands, to realize that you are capable of making things with your hands is a good thing. And you are doing a net positive to humanity, even if I have to take the argument that DIY culture is stupid and manipulative in a podcast.
Says the guy who has "Go Make a Thing" on his T-shirt right now. Okay,
I don't give a shit what you make. Just make something.
So I think the truth is all three of us obviously think that DIY is a great thing, but I think we have been turned off in the last few years by some concerning trends we saw, and that's what we were
HGTV,
which is
HGTV
it's
mostly.
like okay. So let's talk about that because HGTV, what you see on those shows is deceptive. It's deceptively simple.
Can we come to understand the difference? I want to point this out for our audience who don't know when I say camera ready, what I'm about to mean, because camera ready and finished, like in real life, IRL, are two different things. Mm-hmm. You can make an object that when somebody walks up to and interacts with it, it is beautiful. It feels right. It feels complete. It feels harmonious. Camera ready means that it needs to look good from 20 feet. Because even if that camera's up close, your TV is 10 to 15 feet away from you. And that is what you shoot for when you are on television. It has to look camera ready. And that's an important differentiation.
Sure. So there's camera. Yeah, I'm sure it's much harder in real life to make it good than camera ready. The deceptive practices, though, to me, has to do with the editing. So in some ways, so it makes everything look so quick, so easy, so simple, because they cut out the majority of the trouble, the hard work, the problems you didn't anticipate, the drill bit broke, you made a mistake, all that's cut out. It's all just like, Bob Vila shows up to put in the last nail. Hey, everybody, snap. It was so easy. And it's not that easy. And here, I'm going to keep going. You fucking wait. And the reason I get so upset about this is because then my wife thinks that I can do it that fast. And she's like, let's redo this. Let's redo that. Let's redo it. And I'm like, do you know how difficult it is to do what you're asking? And
that's just like, partners, man.
She's just like, no, I just saw it on the show. They made it look super easy. So this was my solution. I was like, well, it's not super easy. And if you want me to do this next project, I will do it. But on one condition, you're going to do it with me.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
And she did. She's a trooper. So I'm not giving her a hard time. She ponied up. She did every step, was there with me. But I mean, it was actually good for a number of reasons because it was time spent together, even if we were arguing half the time. But the other reason it was good is because it did show her how involved the asks are. So that it took her from the HGTV mentality of DIY, DIY so easy, so quick, to really what are the logistics of actually doing this, as Eric likes to say, IRL, because that's what the kids say, apparently. So that was my solution to bridging that gap from those fucking deceptive TV shows that influenced. All right.
That's a fair point. My main pushback with that would be if they were to air a show that was 6 hours long of somebody laying tile, you know who would watch it? You wouldn't fucking watch it because that's horseshit. Nobody, the reason why people walk away when people are laying tile, because nobody wants to listen to the tile guy complain about his fucking wife for 6 hours. Like, that's how it goes. So it's a hard thing to take something that takes that long and compress it into what would be an entertaining amount of time.
Yeah. But that medium has, I think, skewed our expectation of DIY. I did want to point that out.
And that's a fair point. I think that is just as much the fault of the viewer as it is of the producers of television, because they haven't bothered to like get a secondary source. Just Google, like, how long
Right.
does it take to tile a bathroom? They just go, well, I saw Bob Vila do it in 20 minutes. So that's how long it should take.
It's not only television. I mean, social media itself
Yeah.
is just
Sure.
as deceiving. And I think that's why people enjoy the videos where people own up to the mistakes that have been done and say,
Yeah.
this is why it's taken me so long, etc.
Okay, but all right, you're 100% right, but I'm going to push back against this idea again outside of the woodworking oeuvre. And let's say,
Is it like John now?
Let's
It's just a word that you use for anything?
let's just, for example, you're reading a book. You're reading Harry Potter.
Uh-huh.
Harry Potter takes place over the course of a school year. 10 months, 10 and a half months.
Sure.
The longest book was 700 pages. How many of those pages were Harry woke up and brushed his teeth and then he combed his hair in the mirror and then he groggily walked down to the room and got some tea and crumpets and then he sat and talked? Like, that's not, nobody gives a shit because that's not what the interesting thing is. Right.
I would read it.
No, you wouldn't. Stop. You can go to Reddit fanfic and start reading Harry Potter fanfic. Don't tell me you would read it.
So some of the so this is to get us back on track. From Harry Potter scratching his balls in the morning and brushing
Shower
his teeth.
thoughts.
Showering.
To get
Oh
us
my
back,
God.
this is where we were. We said the three of us do believe DIY is a good thing, but there are some negatives that we had to dispel. Which is some of the recent negatives are it's not shown in a way that's realistic on social media or TV. And Eric, I get your point. No one wants to watch a full tiling job, tile by tile. I think there's this feeling of low quality materials and low quality builds. And I think, there is a money issue. Not everyone has the money for higher quality, but also they don't know where to get that higher quality material. Because if you ask people, hey, would you like higher quality wood? A lot of people would say yes, but they don't know where to get it because it gets into that specialty realm of like available to only the pros or people who are really in the field. Like that's why we did an episode on where do you get your wood? Because we've been in it long enough to have those specialty relationships and ways to get the higher quality material. So that's another one. We talk about low quality tools being involved. So why do you think there's low quality tools?
Because if you don't know what you're doing, you don't want to spend $400 on a hand plane.
Yes.
You don't want to spend $250 on a DeWalt, drill like this, and that's reasonable. Like if you are going to use it, here's what I'll say: is Ryobi good? No. If you are going to use Ryobi tools once every other month for the next 5 years, that is perfectly reasonable for what they are able to withstand.
Yeah. Also, you get locked into the brand because you buy one, you got the battery pack. That's just how all the
That's how it works.
So of course, that's the most popular. It's the barrier. It's like the entry.
I wonder how long it's going to be before power tools have a subscription-based model.
Oh my God, don't. I
bet it's
It'll
already
happen eventually. Yeah.
I mean, cars do.
Sorry?
Yeah, cars, there are specific features that are locked behind subscription models.
I hate everything.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Oh, Mary. Okay, so low quality builds, low quality tools. Sorry, Mary.
Sorry, Mary.
Okay, so a lot of it has to do with the low quality and the unrealistic expectations. And I think there's a low level of rigor associated with the whole thing in general. Because if you're using low quality tools and low quality building materials and you don't really know what you're doing, there's a low, disposable, longevity is a problem. But you know what? I'm okay with that because it's okay to make a piece of shit, to use it for a while, realize it's a piece of shit, and then the next version, you upgrade. You don't have to go from A to S or T every time. You can go A to B, B to C. Because if you expect the first time you do anything, let's say you're a DIYer and it's the first time you're making an end table, and you really expect it to go from I don't know woodworking to this is going to be a high quality piece of furniture masterfully done. That is such a huge jump, and it will inhibit you. You'll want to learn, I have to learn this, I have to look this up, and you won't have an end table for about 6 months. But what if you just make a piece of shit and it just it lasts a couple years and then it starts to bug at you and then you say, okay, I'm ready to make a better version.
So I would have two questions to that. The first is, if we're talking about the spiritual resolve of somebody to make a piece of furniture better every time, like I think it's a fair argument that my generation, Mary's and I generation, grew up with participation trophies. Like, it's, we were congratulated for just showing up and not doing fucking anything.
That's fair.
So I think it can be a real issue if you've been told your entire life that like nothing is that hard, and if you just want to do it, it's good enough, to actually like take that gut check and be humbled to the point where you go like, oh, I suck at this, but I want to learn it, and you can do it. But I think that's a difficult thing. From an economic perspective, if you're talking about like getting better tools over time, I think the sunk cost fallacy comes into play there. Like, if you buy a Ryobi tool and you spend $150 on 4 tools, now not only is your mindset of like, well, that's what tools cost, and then you go to buy a drill from DeWalt and it costs $170 and you're offended by it, but also then you've just lost the $150 you put into those other tools because now you realize they're pieces of shit.
Yeah, but you can sell them now.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm a fan of the iterative thing, because if you put too much pressure to make a thing that is, as a DIYer, if you put so much pressure to make a thing that is exquisite right from the very beginning, you're either not going to make it, or you're going to buy the tools, install out, or you're going to crash halfway. Very few people can pull it off to go from I don't know anything to an exquisite piece of furniture in one step. I'm all about iteration. Like, make a thing, get it done. It might be missing a few things you wanted, but at least you made it. And now you have an end table. You didn't, I know people who, actually a friend of mine, the dad was so hung up on doing everything perfectly that they lived without flooring. They walked around on plywood. He wanted to do the hardwood flooring perfectly. And he could never bring himself to actually get it done because the barrier was so high in his head. So the family walked around on plywood for the last 35 years. And it's never going to be done.
Terrible.
He couldn't pull it off.
At what point do you cut it off, though? Like,
well, the wife might say, enough of this. I want, and he's like, I'll get it done. I just have to do a little more research. Or, I'm not exactly sure how it played out, but it just,
that sounds like relationship therapy.
Yep.
All I'm saying is perfectionism and expecting perfectionism and expecting too much can have a nasty side. All right,
that's fair, and I don't think that anybody starts off like, nobody goes from 0 to 100. Nobody does. There are people who have the natural aptitude for these things and take on those higher skill sets really early on. But even those people make bullshit at the beginning because they don't know how to do a thing. And yes, I think to your point, I'm just playing devil's advocate, but to your point, people need to cut themselves some grace and allow themselves to be bad at a thing for a time to learn how it's done.
So can I ask a question though? Like, how do you feel about the two different parties of, there's people who are trying to learn and they learn from YouTube, DIY, etc. And then there's the people who are leaders of the DIY industry who are trying to teach the others. Do you think they have more of a responsibility of, I don't even know what kind of responsibility, but like, are they pushing certain trends? Are they the ones who are, trying to switch up the different interior design styles every single year and trying to push that? Like, do they have like any kind of responsibility, do you think, as like the people that everyone looks up to?
I think they should have a feeling of responsibility, but I think they follow the dollar, to be honest. I think they push whatever trend is getting them eyeballs.
Yeah.
Oh, that's an excellent question. And it's a hard question to answer.
It doesn't have to be an answer.
It's not a hard question to answer if you don't if you're not worried about getting canceled in certain circles.
I'm not worried about getting canceled, and the people I'm thinking of specifically know that I love them, and I think it's unfair to question whether people are attempting to be thought leaders in a field or if they are attempting to run a business. Because those are two different things. And if you're attempting to run a business, your aim is to keep the business healthy, make money, and that's like full stop. So there are people in the DIY field who tear out rooms in order to redo them every couple of years because they need another room to remodel. But is that better or worse than people like pouring river tables? Or is that better or worse than
people who buy a house and rip out the kitchen every time they buy a new house?
Yeah. Or if again we want to go outside woodworking, like people producing styrofoam cups, like is that better or worse than somebody who's renovating a room once every 3 years? Like I don't know. You know?
Yeah. All right. So I think we've covered, I think, most of the question of is DIY just marketing bullshit. I think it's overwhelmingly good, is I think our summary, but we have seen some troubling trends in the last few years that maybe weren't always part of DIY. Maybe they were. I don't know. But I think we talked about both sides. So now we're going to pivot to our next segment, which is, Eric, would you like to introduce our next segment?
I got you, buddy boy. Woodworking facts to myth bust. Here we go. So I'm going to give you guys a fact that is a truism in the woodworking world, and you can debate whether or not this is a myth or a fact. Number 1, putting your plane down on its side is best practice.
Who goes first?
Go. Whoever has a more visceral reaction.
We know the answer to this.
Yeah. It's absolutely a myth.
Yeah. Putting it down on wood, it's supposed to be touching wood, and putting it down on wood protects it from getting dinged or banged by like tools flinging about the work surface. And Conrad Sauer, our first guest, who makes planes for a living, he unequivocally educated us that
he came in hot about that, huh?
That is total bullshit, leaving it on its side. In fact, it leaves it vulnerable to damage to the blade.
I'm sorry, I only have concrete and steel workbenches.
Oh my god. I'm an industrial designer. I do have to say, there is nothing, and this goes for anybody who is listening to this podcast who may or may not take a class from me or meet me somewhere. There is nothing that irritates me more than somebody walking up to my bench, grabbing my plane, and turning it 90 degrees on its side. I don't care how pleasant the conversation has been up to that point. You, sir, and I say sir because it's always a white dude over the age of 70, can get fully fucked. Don't touch my tools. Thank you.
Don't oeuvre my tools.
Don't oeuvre my tools.
How often do you get those comments on your videos?
Not so much on the every now and again, but it's like the most it happens, especially at the Lee Nielsen events when I used to do those. People would just walk up and feel very comfortable grabbing my tools and rotating them 90 degrees and giving me that knowing look of like, I did you a favor. And I'm like, you're an idiot. Get out of my face. Number 2, only hardwood is suitable for quality furniture. Oh, Paul's got feelings.
I do usually use hardwoods, but I'm not against softwoods. I will use them sometimes. And in secondary, definitely for drawer sides and bottoms that don't get a lot of action, I use them. Meaning like, dinged and hit and touched.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, softwoods have historically been the wood for things that need to be easily made, like cut dovetails through. When you hand cut dovetails, it goes together so much easier with softwoods than hardwoods. Right. And chair bottoms for like when you scoop chair bottoms for Windsor chairs, you're not going to scoop hard maple. You're just not going to. It's going to be poplar. It's going to be pine. It's going to be something like that. So, they have their place is my answer.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I mostly stick with hardwoods, but I would never say that only hardwood is suitable for quality furniture. That's kind of the word that I would point out, the only. So both definitely have their place. I agree.
Paul was right in that historically softwoods have been used more often than hardwoods because they're just easier to work with hand tools. They are also like pine is such a delight to work.
Yeah.
It smells good. It works beautifully. There's two main reasons, to my knowledge, why pine is not used as much in furniture anymore. Number one is it's soft, so it dings easily, which is fair, but poplar dings easily as well. The reason that pine is not used as much as poplar is because pine has pitch, and pitch will coat your machines.
It does.
And that's fair. That's a real concern. But a hand-planed pine finish is about as good as it gets in the woodworking world. It's a delight, man.
But Eric, there's also the issue of softwoods not looking as good often.
Over time, a freshly planed pine surface looks delightful in my opinion.
No. I didn't mean about the touch of the surface. I mean the color, the character. I don't find myself drawn to using poplar and pine as a design aesthetic.
That's fair. Poplar's ugly.
Yeah, people tend to use poplar usually if you're going to be painting over it.
Right? Unfortunately.
Or internal components, yeah.
And I almost would take it as a design challenge to make poplar look beautiful as a design challenge. But, when I have all these beautiful walnuts and curly maples and all these, it's hard to want to use a softwood.
It is. And so pine goes brown really quick. Poplar goes brown really quick. The benefit to softwoods, generally speaking, now, if anybody doesn't know, hardwoods, generally speaking, are deciduous trees. Softwoods, generally speaking, are conifers, roughly. Similarly, hardwoods or deciduous trees are typically denser and heavier, and softwoods are typically lighter. So if you are making, and this is an important differentiation, if you are making furniture that is to be moved and traveled with, pine becomes a really valuable resource. So if you're making, say, trunks that you need to haul onto a ship because it's 1854 and you need to travel to America, guess what? You're not making that trunk out of maple. It's not going to happen. You're not making it out of oak. If you're making a tool chest, guess what? My traveling tool chest is made out of pine because it weighs half as much as it would if I had made it out of oak.
Great point.
It has its place. But if you're dealing with fine furniture, then people get skittish about it being dented.
All right. So, my house is finished in entirely longleaf pine. And so I made our butcher block countertops out of pine. And people would be like, "Are you stupid? It's going to get dented, dinged, crushed, burnt." And you know what? I knew it. And I said, yes, I know that. And I don't care, because those dings and that surface is telling the story of my family in the kitchen for the next 100 years. And you know what? The shittier it looks, the more I love it. And I knew that from the beginning, and I made that decision. And I think, to each their own.
I love that decision. And to a point about, general rules, longleaf pine is more dense than eastern white pine, but it's not as dense as southern yellow pine. So there are variables within, domestic softwoods as well. But also, just back to DIY culture, when you eventually sell that house, somebody's going to rip it out and put in like faux marble countertops. And
Wait, sorry, can I ask real quick? You were saying about the trunk. Is it because of the density and the weight?
The weight,
yes. Yeah. So the lower the density, the less the weight. And so if you're moving a bunch of things in a trunk, and it needs to be light so that two people can pick it up.
I did hear that the Titanic sunk because of all the oak wood.
That is exactly what happened, actually, now that I think about it. Number 3, modern glues are better than hide glue.
No.
Paul can speak to this. I do not have
Paul, you okay over there,
this.
buddy?
I've only used modern glues.
Paul just had a moment.
Paul is having a conniption.
Is that what that was? I couldn't tell if it was good or bad.
He's turned into Smeagol.
It makes me so angry.
I can't speak to this one, but Paul can.
Oh, I can speak. All right. First of all, fuck everyone. All right. That's I want to lead off with that. All right. So, all right.
Hard stance to come to.
Here's the problem. For centuries, we've had hide glue. Centuries. Every piece of furniture in a museum that you ooh and ah over. Ooh, it's so beautiful. Oh, look at that block front chest from Newport. Ooh, so beautiful. It's all hide glue, motherfuckers. It's not modern PVA glues. I'm sorry. You have been brainwashed by marketing and companies to buy modern glues as if they're better. And actually, if you talk to anyone who does furniture restoration, they hate yellow glues. Because every time the glue joint breaks, you have to clean the glue off the surface. How do you do that? Not with water. You got to scrape it off. You got to chisel it off. You have to scrape it off. And guess what that does to your beautiful mortise and tenon joints? It makes them loose because you can't just take off the glue and not some of the wood. So then you scrape the shit out of all these pieces and probably damage them in the process. And now all your joints fit loose, which means you don't have good contact, which means the re-gluing of it is not going to go that well and it's not going to hold up nearly as long. Had you used hide glue, you could have just steamed that. Well, the joint would have come apart, right? You could just wipe it down with water, re-hide glue it. You're good for another century. Fact, not opinion. Not only that, but hide glue is non-toxic. It's like a renewable resource. We have tons of cows. We have tons of cow
so
hide.
many horses. Paul hates horses is what I'm taking away from this.
He's horses.
Okay, now why? And it's renewable, repairable. It sticks to itself. It's got every, So for those of you who haven't tried hot hide glue, you should. And there's a version of it called Old Brown glue where they modify it with urea, so you don't even have to heat it up in a boiler. You can just put it in a glass of hot water. It solubilizes. You use it, you clamp it, you're good, and you keep it in the fridge. So you should try hide glue. Now, is there a place for modern glues? Yes, of course there's a place for modern glues. Hide glue, you have to let it sit overnight, at least 12 hours before it's tacked enough to do anything. You don't always have 12 hours. Maybe you want to do something and just have it clamped for an hour and move on. Something that isn't going to, come apart like a chair. Something that's just, it doesn't really matter. Or maybe it's not made to last centuries. Maybe it's just a utilitarian item. Of course there's a place for yellow glues, especially in outdoor. There's like waterproof glues. Hide glue is not waterproof. So there's a time and a place for like things like quick and thick that set real quick, when you just want it done. There's CA glue, which is an amazing product. I use it every day in the shop. The PVA glues, the urea glues, the formaldehyde glues, the Gorilla glues, which I do use for veneer sometimes. There is a place for all of them, but for almost everything I do that is family heirloom style, I use hide glue. Right. And why you don't hear more about it is because of marketing. No one's getting rich off hide glue.
Yeah, Paul took everything I was going to say, so.
No, you're not even going to defend horses out here? Okay. I agree with Paul on the whole that hide glue is wonderful. It's a useful resource. I would alter the sentence, not say modern glues are better than hide glue. I would say modern glues are different than hide glue. They fill different niches. If everybody used hide glue exclusively, there would be no more horses and cows because there are too many people making too many things. But I'm not listening. I'm all for hide glue, and I'm all for eating beef. I'm not trying to make a vegan argument out here.
Bitch, what do you know about the supply of cows and hide glue?
I'm making a provocative statement because this is social media. I do think, however, hide glue in the long term for furniture is more repairable, a better alternative if you can utilize it. But sometimes it doesn't make sense to utilize it. So I'm with you there. Number 4, end grain glue ups are weak.
Mary, why don't you start?
I'm on the edge for this one. I would say that end grain glue ups can be weaker than edge glue ups or face glue ups, but they're not weak as like a whole. I think that they definitely have enough strength for what people are trying to do with, making their furniture, whatever DIY they're trying to do.
So next time you make a dining table, you're just going to forego joinery and glue up end grain aprons to long grain legs?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right. Noted.
I assume I'm not going to be held to anything I say here. But I do think that there is a general, there's a general thought that like end grain glue ups should just never be done. And I think that they're stronger than most people think, especially, if you flood the end grain first, if you make sure that you do everything properly and consider, what it's going to be like further down the line. So I don't know. I don't really go on a specific side for this one.
All right. I would use the end grain glue joint sparingly. If it is non-weight bearing, I might use it. If it's just like a decorative thing in a box, right? Something. But if it's weight bearing, oh no. Oh no, that'll break. But however, this comes to our previous conversation of glues, which several of my friends, and they swear by it, that the quick and thick, the real thick PVA modified glues of recent years can glue end grain with a staggering strength that you're not
That's what it was
used
designed to
seeing.
do. Yeah.
I haven't tested it myself, but I believe them when they say it. So I think there is a place for, you can do it maybe with some of the modern glues, but I mean, I wouldn't, but.
I would say on the whole, I heard an interesting argument that I agree with, that the question is not necessarily about the strength of end grain glue ups, but rather the orientation more. So typically when you're gluing two boards, face grain to face grain, like it's going to be really hard. You don't have leverage to break those things apart. When you are gluing end grain to long grain, you've got an L shape and you have way more leverage.
Yeah.
Fair.
So that's interesting. Now, that being the case, you also have to consider the capillary action that happens when you're gluing end grain. So sizing those pores, sealing them off, that's fair. And using something like Quick and Thick, if I'm gluing end grain, I'm using Quick and Thick. Like it is a really good material.
Yeah.
And just to give a example, one time early on in my career, I want to say it was like just after college, maybe like 2010, I was making frames and panels for the Poughkeepsie train station. And I didn't know about joinery as a concept yet. So I made 3 of these, they were like 8 feet by maybe 3 feet oak frames and panels. And I just glued all of the end grain together. Had no idea what I was doing.
Wow.
And
That's
they
long
broke
session.
twice. And I just kept gluing them together until they didn't break
You just
again.
flooded it.
I just kept doing it. And I still go back every now and again. I go back in that train station just to see if they've broken. And it's been 15 years. They're still there. They're still fine.
Well, Eric, question. You know how we do mitered boxes constantly, you and I?
Yeah. It's
A miter joint's kind of like
baby.
it's kind of half end grain.
Yeah, exactly. Size those joints and glue them up. All right. Number 5. Woodworking is only for men. Mary, how do you feel about that?
What?
I'm gonna edit the sound clip so that we're not talking about Miss and it's just Eric saying.
Why are you trying to get me canceled?
Oh my god! I mean, I'm literally speechless.
Do we even have to dignify that? Come on, that's so fucking dumb. Eric, you were supposed to save that one for the after show so we could get real gnarly on the answer.
It's a myth. I also like how both of you guys were pretending when I said that, like we hadn't discussed these fucking points before the show.
Oh my god!
Just waiting to throw me under the bus out here.
I will always throw you under the bus, please.
I know.
I will say this is something that has been that people legitimately think, which is
this is
wild.
why it's a myth that we need to talk about, because it's clearly untrue.
Yeah, I mean, I clearly don't support this view and would probably end our friendship if either of you did support it. So yeah, this is absolutely
Eric,
insane.
You have a way out.
Oh man.
Okay, on that note.
Yeah. Woodworking is not only for men, friends. Join us in the after show where we talk about more of these.
Well, we're going to have
more
5
controversy.
Okay, so we're going to have 5 more of these in the after show. We're going to bust another 5 myths. Before we go, I'd like to thank our patrons this week. We have Twisted Dillo. You read that right. Twisted Dillo, Chase Southard, and Ed Duncan. Thank you 3 for supporting us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
As well as our other patrons. Why should you become a patron? Because you want to see that juicy after show where we bust more myths. On that note, bye everyone. We hope you enjoyed today's discussion.
Make good decisions.
Bye.